16 million colors. Wreak some havoc in your head.
Break up. Snatcher.
Greetings, junkies. Welcome to the Saturn Junkyard Titancast. My name is Brian, and I am joined by a panel of hosts today, including Camron, hailing from Canada. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good, good. I think it's been a while since we've done one of these. Also joining us is Nuno from Portugal. How are you doing?
Very good. Still haven't got COVID, so that's awesome.
All right, got to take our wins where we can get them. And joining us as a guest today from the Dreamcast Junkyard, it's Lewis. What's up, man? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a while since I was on a sort of Titancast thing with the crossover we did last year. But this is my first proper, original Titancast episode that I'm on, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was that a Titancast or was that a Dream Pod?
Dream Pod, but it was a crossover, and it was epic.
That's true. I knew we were gonna. I remember we were going to try to do a 2-part of that and have one that we host on our channel, and then as like a follow up. And I suppose we could still do that. I think we just have to arrange everybody's schedules to make that happen.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because in that one we had done. Yeah, that's right. It was like the Dream Pod. I don't know, 70 something. I don't remember what number it was, but yeah, we're a few of you from the Dreamcast Dream Pod did the your favorite Saturn games, and then we had our favorite Dreamcast games. And then also, speaking of collaborations, a couple of years ago, we did a community poll to get the top 100 favorite Saturn games among community members. And when we produced the article to show those results, I know we had a few people from around the community contribute different write-ups to some of the entries. And you had written a few paragraphs about Keio Flying Squadron 2, right?
Yes, and I also talked about the game on the Titancast crossover with the Dream Pod. So
that's right.
Seeing as we're talking about today, this is my third Saturn Junkyard endorsed time talking about this game, and this is the best one. Yeah,
you have to evangelize it at any opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, I've got to preach the gospel. Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of me with Blue Stinger. I think I talked about that like at least several times across different articles and Dream Pod episodes.
Yeah, I mean, as I told you the other day, Brian, you could write a book on why Blue Stinger is flawed but incredible.
The problem is that would just be I'd be writing in circles, just coming to the same conclusions that also branch into tangents that branch into tangents. I think very little of that book would actually be about Blue Stinger itself, and more about, I don't know, product review culture and I don't know, big pharma, or just depiction of corporate hubris in video games and an overlap with the real world. I don't know. It would just be a big tangent. So maybe I could fill a book with that, but it may not be super relevant entirely. Maybe the first chapter would be about Blue Stinger specifically, and then it would just spiral out of control from there. But yeah, thank you again for joining us. And that was a little foreshadowing. Of course, the episode title, I'm sure, will give it away as well. But yeah, we will be talking primarily about Keio Flying Squadron 2, a game that I often just for some reason I call it Keio Flying Squirrel. I don't know why, but that's just pops in my brain whenever I have to stop myself. Pretty much every time I try to say the title of that game. So yeah, I mean, I think we can just go around the table at this point and talk about just things we've been up to, little personal intros. What kind of projects or games have you been involved with or playing? So yeah, I think we can start with you, Camron. What's new with you?
like Simon, I've been doing a lot of gardening, and around this part of the time of the year is when I've been taking everything in, cutting everything down, going through the drying and the curing processes to kind of make sure that everything stays fresh over time. As for
Nice.
games, I've been playing a little bit of Banjo-Kazooie because that had a Halloween themed level in it, which is Mad Monster Mansion. So that was a good bit of time. Then I started switching over to the Saturn because I got a few new Saturn games over the summer, which was Tunnel B1, which is not necessarily as bad as everyone thinks it is. And I got High Velocity Mountain Racing. And the interesting thing I found is both of them have the exact same camera view in first person. Which I was like, everyone complains about the camera view in Tunnel B1, but I don't know how many people are complaining about it in High Velocity.
You mean for being because it's like basically a mouse's eye view?
Yeah, you're like completely on the floor, on this weird
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like racing games are probably a different boat for that kind of camera perspective, and that it may work a little because you have bumper cams in like Metropolis Street Racer and other racing games, and then you also have first person dash or higher cameras. Jeez, but yeah, so I don't know. I feel like there's maybe it's a little different when you're trying to navigate and survive and you're getting shot at and you have to avoid and try to destroy stuff in the level versus just racing the courses over and over and I don't know. I feel like maybe a ground's eye view maybe works a little better for racers.
So those were the two games that I was playing. I'd say most of September or October, something like that. And now I'm going to go move into the Halloween themed games for the rest of the month, I think, where I
Nice.
want to start playing like Resident Evil, which I got a guide for, so I want to actually sit down and play through the game. And the guide is a real eye opener where it's like, I didn't know that you could just avoid certain fights. I was under the impression that if a zombie showed up, you had to deal with it, and it's like, oh no, you can just walk around him. It's like, that's a solution? Wonderful.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, really, really pushing that scarcity aspect of the game, I suppose. Because I think if you tried to fight everything, I mean, depending on the version you play, you could probably run out of ammo pretty quickly.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Because like I didn't even realize they wanted you to beat the game in like 3 hours. Like there's an expectation? That's interesting.
What happens? Is there like a bad ending if it's beyond that? I actually.
No, I think that there's just like you unlock something by beating it under a certain amount of time. The good or bad endings come by if you save or don't save certain people throughout the game.
I see. Are you gonna play like the Saturn version or like the remake on GameCube?
Oh yeah, no. That's the only way that I'm going to be enjoying my video games really is 5th gen really. So I want to enjoy Resident Evil on Saturn. I'm going to bring out House of the Dead for Saturn and enjoy some light gun games. And even though, maybe House of the Dead isn't seen as like the greatest light gun game, because, on Saturn everyone's like, oh, the graphics are horrible. I love it. Love it.
I think yeah, I agree. I think it's a pretty good I mean it's not a great port, but it's fundamentally an enjoyable game, and it doesn't take that away from it. It's still a well-designed light gun shooter. Well, good times. So how about you, Nuno? What have you been playing lately?
Speaking of House of the Dead, wasn't there going to be a remake on the Switch?
Yes.
When's that going to come out?
That I don't know, but it does look really good.
I mean, it should really come out like this month, right?
That would be convenient, right?
Yeah, it's been a little while since that trailer came out, right?
Yeah, I
I'm
absolutely
gonna look it
love
up.
House of the Dead, and I think I've played the Saturn version more than the arcade one. And yes, the graphics have been very downgraded, but I think it's one of those games that, I mean, I'm not going to downplay the importance of graphics, um, but it's one of those games that I think lives and dies based on the gameplay. And in the case of House of the Dead, also on the ambience, the mood that it gets you in when you play it. And I think that was still translated, even with the downgrade in pure graphical power. I think the important part is still there. And of course, yes, the arcade version is much superior. But yeah, I still think the Saturn version, even with the differences and the issues, is still very much worth playing. Yeah, you guys are kind of putting me in the mood to actually dig out my light gun and my
Yeah.
CRT
Do
and play some House
it.
of the Dead.
Yeah, I think I have
Do
to.
it.
Yeah.
Zombies.
So it looks like Nintendo's Switch site has it still slated for 2021, but it doesn't specify, specific
Hmm.
date. I'm wondering if it would be a candidate. I don't know if there will be a Nintendo Direct in the next couple of weeks, but I could speculate that it might be one of those games that might drop just as a surprise release, in the same way that Panzer Dragoon did, right? So, and it's also produced, or Forever Entertainment is also publishing it. So, there is a little commonality there, that maybe they're setting something up for that. But yeah, it would be great if it would come out before Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not before Halloween, is it going to be for Christmas? It's not a very Christmassy game.
No, but you know what is Blue Stinger. Should just do a Blue Stinger remake while they're at it. Ah, cool. So what have you been up to, Nuno?
Yeah, what have I been playing? I finally beat Death Stranding on the PC. I stopped playing when I was about roughly 2/3 of the way in, and I just got to a point where yeah, I just felt like taking a break from it. I was enjoying it, but at the same time, kind of not. And I took a break, and ended up being a very long break because I just got into other games and one after the other. And eventually the months went by, and it was kind of nagging me looking at the icon on my desktop. And I thought, okay, I'm not going. First of all, I was kind of in a gaming spree where I was just installing new games and trying them, and then moving on to the next one without even. I'm not even going to say without finishing, without even actually decently putting some hours into the game that I had installed before. I was kind of in a frenzy. So I decided to put a stop to that and uninstall the games that I realistically didn't want to put the time in, didn't want to really get into. And of the rest, trying to beat them one by one, take my time with them, and just, you know, yeah, giving them the attention that they deserve, and not like spreading myself too thin. So yeah, I decided to finally get back to Death Stranding and finish the story. And after finishing the story, I'm actually still playing it because you can. It's one of those types of open world games that you can just play indefinitely, even after finishing. And I'm now trying to. There's actually a lot of optional stuff that you can miss. There were a lot of outposts that I completely missed, and I basically hadn't maxed any one of them. If you guys listening have played the game, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, you're a delivery man, so outposts are the places that you deliver stuff to, and a lot of them are optional. You can, if you just do the story missions and don't explore them, don't stumble upon them, you completely miss them. And besides the story missions, you can do optional missions to kind of max out the level of a given outpost, and you can earn like unlock new equipment or other kinds of perks. And most of them are just, you just do it out of the challenge, and to unlock like bits of lore extra notes in the in-game encyclopedia, database, and stuff like that. So I'm doing that for the challenge and discovering all of the outposts that I completely missed and maxing out the ones that I had found but not maxed, which were all of them. But it's a divisive game, and the weird thing is that I think most people will either really, it's one of those love it or hate it kind of games. um, but at the same time, I kind of love it and hate it at the same time. I have a very weird opinion about it because some things about it I really like, to the point that, as I just said, I finished the story and I am still playing it. So I wouldn't do that if I didn't like it, or if I just wanted to get through the story and see how it ended. So the gameplay itself, I'm liking it a lot, and the graphics are amazing in a very subtle way, which is not something that you see every day in AAA games. Um, they have a very quiet beauty to them, if that makes any sense, and it just has a great ambience to it. But at the same time, the story was weird. It had some very good things about it, but then the execution. I was a really big Kojima fan. I love the Metal Gear Solid series. And when I was younger, that seemed really cool. And now I'm looking back and thinking that if I were to play the Metal Gear games right now for the first time, would I still like them that much? Because the dialogues, the, um, the spoken lines of the characters in Death Stranding, they are just written so badly. They sound so artificial, not like people play talk, I mean. And I'm not criticizing the actors because they did what they could with what they had to work with, but the dialogue was written so badly, and many of the cutscenes are so in your face, are so juvenile. They're dealing with very heavy teams, very important, very hard hitting teams, but then they deal with them in a very juvenile way, very in your face, very amateurish, I would say, which is a strong criticism to like a venerated guy in the industry like Kojima. But that's honestly what I thought about it. And the end is so cutscene heavy. I mean, every Kojima game is cutscene heavy. But the end of Death Stranding got to a point where honest to God, I took out my phone and just watched other stuff while the videos were playing, because it was just, and I was kind of just listening to them, just getting the gist of what was going on, because I was just bored out of my fucking mind. And on one hand, I didn't want to just forsake the story and not know what was going on, but at the same time, I just couldn't like give it my full attention because I was just bored out of my mind. And the final bunch of cutscenes on the beach, if you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. That was just ridiculous. And then when you think it's over, you basically watch a big ass cutscene that basically shows the same thing that you've been watching throughout all the game, but in a from a different perspective and more in your face. So it's not clever, it's just wasteful. You throughout the game, you're seeing all of these little cutscenes that you put together in your mind to put the whole story together in your mind and get the full picture. And then in the end, it shows you the full picture anyway. It's like, why? It's not
Yeah.
rewarding. It's not even rewarding the gamers who actually pay attention and get into it, because it just tells you everything in your face in the end, as if you hadn't paid any attention at all. So yeah, you can see that it it had an impact on me. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend so much time talking about it. And yeah, it it's not, it didn't leave me, I wasn't indifferent to it. On the contrary, uh, but at the same time, yeah, I have very, very, very mixed feelings about it. I don't know if you guys played it. I would actually like to know what you think about it if you did.
I have not, but I've heard that sentiment that you described for the narrative. Yeah, I definitely feel like that's a critique that's pretty prominent for this game, where it just really makes sure you understand how clever it is, right? I don't know. I guess I don't really care enough about narratives in general for games to really like focus on that too much, but it seems like Kojima games are really reliant on that in a way that most other games that don't try to intersect with film as much, can kind of have terrible stories, and that doesn't really impact them as much. So I'm gonna have either of you played Death Stranding, Lewis or Cameron?
No,
Yeah, no, I've
I
not
don't play
played
much
it.
PS4.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm thinking still about getting the director's cut, but I imagine I'll wait until it drops in price.
Yeah, I haven't really played a lot of Kojima stuff for a long time. Like, he kind of makes me. I appreciate obviously the the vision behind a lot of what he does, but I kind of, especially when I saw like the things for Death, like the trailers originally for Death Stranding, it kind of like maybe I don't know how to explain. It feels a bit kind of over the top and like I don't know how to explain. It kind of reminds me of like you get a band who get famous for like being like really like artistic and cool, and then like on the next album they like really drive it home just too much, and you think like the
Hmm.
reason why your original stuff was good was because you kind of just like it was kind of fresh, and then they kind of go a little bit too far with it, and I kind of feel like everyone wants him to be an artist so badly, and he puts together these games that seem so dense. And like I just remember my friend playing Metal Gear Solid 4, and I just remember him putting the controller down to watch like these hours and hours of cut scenes, and just thinking like, yeah, like I love stories in games and narrative driven games, but maybe I'll give these a miss. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be curious to go back and play some of the like the Sega CD, like Snatcher
Mm.
and of course Policenauts for the Saturn. I
Hmm.
think I'm pretty sure I have both of those somewhere, or at least either translated versions for Policenauts, and then actually do have the original disc for Snatcher for whatever reason. But I'm deathly afraid to ever play it because I don't want to I don't want to scratch it. So I might download that one as well. Have I don't know. What do you all think? Have you any of you played either of those?
I have played both. Um, the first one on the Mega CD and the other one on the on. I mean, let me say, not first one and second one. That's a weird way to put it. I played Snatcher on the Mega CD, and I played Policenauts at the time on the PlayStation because it was the only translation available. It was before the Saturn version got its translation finished, and it's not exactly a sequel. Policenauts is not exactly a sequel to the Snatcher, but they're usually kind of bundled together or talked about as if they're kind of the same series because they play in the same style. They're both like visual novels, graphic adventures. So in that sense, they are similar, not in terms of plot or anything like that. And at the time, I remember enjoying them. Snatcher has more like a cyberpunk vibe, while Policenauts is more, I would say, grounded. Policenauts is actually very interesting um, regarding what it has to say about space and about human exploration of space, because it's not space like in Star Trek. It's space, but in a much more much more grounded way. Like humanity hasn't gone beyond the beyond our system, our solar system. It actually has gone only so far as I think the moon, at least. Don't know if they got to Mars. I played it a long time ago. Um, so it's much more realistic in that way, and it feels closer to home. And it deals with themes like the impact that zero gravity has on the human body, on our physiology, stuff like that, that makes it very grounded in reality and gives it a very specific tone that a lot of like sci-fi games don't have because they go so far out that they're not really relatable anymore. And in that regard, I thought Policenauts was really, really interesting. Snatcher as well, although Snatcher has a more, I would say, far out tone compared to Policenauts. It's more cyberpunk, it's more weird. But they are both interesting games, yeah. I remember enjoying them a lot.
Sounds like we need to all play through them and convene on another one of these episodes to talk through Policenauts at least. Well, cool. Well, how about you, Lewis? What have you been playing lately?
So just like me in general, I'm just kind of, I suppose, enjoying normality, I guess. Now lockdown has eased. In the UK we went through a few goes of it, and now it seems a little bit more normal, and I feel a little bit more kind of like less. I don't know. I just feel a little bit more like happy, like seeing my friends and stuff, and without that kind of impending doom of they're going to put us back in. So that's been nice. It's been nice to see people, and after our Tony Hawk Pro Skater Dreamcast Junkyard live stream we did, you were on it, Brian. I impulse bought a skateboard. So yeah, it's been a long time since I skated. I used to skate every
Nice.
weekend as a teenager. Somewhat when I was like in my 20s. I'm in my late 20s now, but like, yeah, it's getting to the point. I'm enjoying doing it again, but it's I don't feel like I can skate as long as I used to without like hurting all over. So, that's kind of, I suppose, what comes with being in your late 20s as opposed to your early 20s and skateboarding. But yeah, it's still fun. And but yeah, more game related stuff is, I'm trying to think what I've played recently. An actual like a project I'm involved with actually, like in the community, is to translate the visual novel for the Dreamcast based on the character from Samurai Showdown, Nakoruru, The Gift She Gave Me. So I'm actually involved with the translation with Derek Pascarella for that, and I'm editing for that. So it's basically taking the translations and trying to make them more just sort of a little bit more fancy, give them more pizzazz, make them less literal and more realistic, I suppose. And yeah, that's been really great. It's been something I've been doing like every day, just editing for that, and that's an exciting project. And because it kind of just feels like playing the game as I go along. So yeah, it's excellent. If you're interested, there's some footage on Derek's YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And yeah, I think everyone's going to be really excited when they play it for the first time in English. And then also just stuff I've played. I played, I know you played at least the demo of this, Brian, but on Xbox I was playing Lake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the demo, so I got the full game, and yeah, it's really good. Like it's odd, really, because it's a game that kind of you don't really do much in it, and
Hey,
yeah.
guys.
Hello.
Hey, Simon.
Simon!
Oh God, what a bloody pain in the arse that's been.
Oh, well, all right. What's
Sorry,
up, man?
you're not on air, are we?
Well, sure we are. How you doing?
Crap.
Welcome.
Right. I'm doing okay now. I've been having the biggest nightmare to get involved. But anyway, I'm here.
Discord giving you some guff.
Discord wouldn't let me in because I was trying to get in from a different location. So it was telling me that it wasn't me and that I was a robot and all kinds of things until I eventually managed to find my way here. So hello everyone, and I'm sorry for my late arrival and my grumpy arrival. It's all
Wait.
good.
But I mean, are you a robot? Or did it settle the matter?
I'm more of, I guess, what you call a cyborg. Part of me are machine, but most of me is human. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, I think that passes the check. I don't know if it would in like a Snatcher or a Blade Runner situation, but certainly here for the
Yeah.
Titancast,
Well, I'll
it's
take that
perfectly
void
okay.
test whenever I require it.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, Lewis was just talking about, and so Lewis, I think what we'll do is, if you want to talk about Lake, I don't know how to. We'll figure out some editing magic to make
I
this
could
seamless.
just start again about
Or
it,
we'll
I suppose.
just
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could just keep going and just pretend like this is all part of it, and
Surprise!
I'll hand it back to you to talk a little more about your experience with Lake.
Okay. Yep. So I've been playing a game on the Xbox called Lake, which I know you played, Brian, the demo of it at least, I presume. But yeah, I thought I liked it so much, I thought I'd get the full game. And it's just like, who would have thought a game where you deliver parcels is so good? Like, it's got that Shenmue sort of slow pace but like relaxing kind of vibe to it. You know, it's just peaceful. Like, it's just like the best game to play after just like being, myself being stressed at working in IT, and all the grumbles that come with that, and just playing a game where you deliver parcels. And it isn't just that. There is like a story involved, and it kind of tells the story as you deliver things. And there's like relationships in it, and it's pretty deep. Yeah, I feel like people who enjoy the sort of slow, real worldly pace of Shenmue would really enjoy playing this game. So yeah, I recommend people check it out. And then I've also been playing on the Dreamcast, which I reviewed, Intrepid Izzy, the new indie game. Excellent. I'm not going to go too much into it. Just read my review on the Dreamcast Junkyard. It is, one of the standout indie games on a console that has many. And this is like the next best one, I'd say. And yeah, and I suppose, seeing as we're talking about Halloween games, as an aside, I just looked out the window and noticed our neighbours have their Christmas lights up, so I guess they got the wrong memo. But yeah,
That's terrifying in its own right, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit too early, but yeah, Halloween games. I've not really got into playing any yet, but a game that I recommend anyone plays if you've not heard of it for Halloween to scare yourself is Clock Tower on the Super Famicom. There's an excellent translation for it. It is probably one of my favorite horror games of all time. It is just terrifying, morbid. It's probably the reason why a lot of the the horror games that feature characters chasing you exist. It kind of laid down the groundwork for that, with its fame. Maybe not famous, he deserves to be, but the sort of beloved Scissor Man character that you have to run from. And yeah, it's absolutely excellent. And if you've not played that, it's one you should play in Halloween, especially seeing as it's so easy to emulate, or put it on an SD to SNES cart or whatever. Definitely play it. It's brilliant. And yeah, that's all from me, I think.
Nice. Yeah, sounds like you've been quite busy. And yeah, best of luck with the translation project. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I'm excited for everyone
sure.
to play it.
Are you able to? Do you have a sense of like when that, or at least like an early version of that, might be released, or are you just still working it out and it'll happen
Yeah,
when it happens?
I think Derek doesn't want to just like release it and then it's half finished. I think he when it gets released, it'll be the full version.
Nice.
I'd say we're about like maybe like 18% translated and edited. More is translated but not edited. And it's probably going to take about a year. Like, this is a visual novel.
Yeah.
It's a big task compared to his last one, which was Rainbow Cotton. That was mostly just kind of translating the anime cutscenes, just to give some context on what's going on there. And yeah, this is a big project, but it's excellent, and I've learnt a lot about a lot of things, like the Ainu period of Japanese history, for example. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there that obviously is a challenge for translation, but also very interesting when we get to the solution of it, I suppose. So yeah, I'm excited for people to play it. Maybe next year, probably.
Nice. Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye out, and I think we should definitely, we'll definitely be eager to hear more about that when you're able to, when it gets closer.
Yep.
And yeah, I agree with the Lake. Also, I only played the demo. I do still need to play the full game. Although I was surprised at how much the demo gave you. It gave you like several days of events and things to kind of get a sense of the flow of the game, which I thought was pretty nice. And yeah, I think the parallels that you draw with Shenmue in a way are pretty apt. It's maybe not as dense, and rather than walking around town, which you can do, but there isn't really the same level of density or things to interact with. It's a little different, but it is a little more sprawled out with being just kind of a rural mountain lake town, lakeside town, and you drive your truck around and deliver parcels. For the record, this is the second parcel delivery video game we are talking about today after Death Stranding. So,
oh yeah,
kind of a theme going here. But yeah, that's really cool. I think it's a pretty enjoyable game. I love the I don't know. It almost I don't mean this as a diss against Shenmue, although it is, and that is it's almost as if the point to point like character development and dialogue that happens in Shenmue. It's like if they did that but good, and actually the characters were multi-dimensional and a little more interesting and witty, and a little more. The writing was a little better. That would definitely be Lake. I think it kind of scratches that itch really well.
The scripting's really good in it. Like, there's a lot of quite good humor and quite deep stuff as well. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, when you're thinking about what's it like when you come back to a town you haven't been to in decades, and then what's changed, what hasn't changed, like those things are very interesting. How what are the dynamics of the people you used to know, or the people who because you have a common there's a lot of people that didn't know you but they knew your dad, and so there's kind of that dynamic as well, and so you get to learn more about what your father was like and his relationships by proxy, just by interacting with the people that he knows. And so it's kind of cool for sure. And I do look forward to playing that full game. So Simon, I think you just joined us. Thank you for hopping on, and it's good to have you. We're just kind of going through our things that we've been playing lately and whatnot, or other goings on in life. So yeah, what's new with you?
What's new with me? Okay, so I've just got my Xbox 360 rigged back up, and that has opened up a whole new world. I've had a bit of a gaming funk, I guess you could call it, or a period where I haven't wanted to play, and it lasted a good few weeks. So I was unable to do anything at that point. And then the 360s kind of saved me. I played Resident Evil 4. I thought if I play something that's really familiar and that I really enjoy, it might get me going again, and it has. So yeah, I've been playing Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, and GTA 4. That's been my gaming diet for the last few weeks, and that's it really.
That's cool. How about so are any of those, like Resident Evil 4, those kind of in celebration of Halloween, or are you?
It was more coincidental. I tried to think of a game that was going to get me sort of in the mood again, for gaming. I couldn't think of anything that I enjoyed more or that was easier for me to navigate and would provide instant satisfaction, and it ticked all those boxes. So yeah, that was it. It's nice. It's a happy coincidence that it's the Halloween month, and I've actually got a new Saturn game which I'm gonna play and review for Halloween this year. Horror themed game which I sent off for probably March of this year, and I've kind of postponed playing it or experiencing it till then. I'm not going to say what it is because I want it to be a bit of a surprise. I'm actually going to make myself write something for the blog as well because I'm terrible at that at the moment. If it wasn't for Jeff, Virtue and Neptune doing all of our sterling written work, the blog would be very quiet. So I'm going to do a Halloween review of this game, and I'm not going to reveal what it is until I've done that. But it's something that I don't think has been reviewed or looked at much by the Saturn community. So I'm kind of excited about it.
That's awesome. All right, we'll look forward to that. And yeah, definitely shout out to Jeff, who's been writing a ton for and putting a lot of great articles out on the Junkyard. So definitely check out his work there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I guess I don't know. I don't really have too much to say. I haven't been playing any Halloween games, although I do want to maybe revisit Illbleed. I had played that a little bit ahead of when we chatted about it for one of the more recent Dream Pods. But yeah, I really like that game, and of course I talked about Blue Stinger a little bit, which it's the same developer or Shinya Nishigaki's team. From Crazy Games, formerly known as Climax Graphics. So, yeah, I don't know. There was a charm to those that really, I feel like, make them Halloween staples for me that I definitely look forward to playing those over the next couple of weeks. House of the Dead 1 and 2 also will be on the docket.
Can I just say, right?
Oh, yeah, go
I
for
was
it.
just going to say that I also have rebought House of the Dead for the PS3 with the with the Move controller, so
Oh,
I can play that, which has got House of the
yeah.
Dead 2, 3, and 4 on it. So I've got those two. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I can't remember. I know we had them digitally here. I don't know if they came out on disc here in the States or in North America, but that's cool if they did. Maybe I should look into that if it's not
Yeah, no,
crazy
I bought
expensive.
a physical copy of it.
Nice. Yeah, and then also Overkill had come out with the move support there, which I still think that might be the best version of the game.
You recommended that to me, and I need to check it out.
It's very different. Like tonally, it's just it's very schlocky. It leans into the ridiculousness of it, and it's not necessarily. It's a different kind of charm, if you can call it that. And yeah, it's really just characters swearing and a lot of body horror and a lot of just this kind of gross out sequences, and it's quite a bit different in its presentation, but I think it plays fantastic. I really enjoy that game as well. And I think another Halloween favorite of mine along those lines would be for PSVR. Got to give it a shout out to Until Dawn Rush of Blood, perennial Halloween shooter favorite as well. At least in my household, love that game. Yeah, otherwise the only other game I've been playing a lot of stuff, but the only one I really would need to touch on, I feel, is Deathloop. I've been playing that, and I finished it, and I didn't 100% it, and it was really interesting because while I was playing it, I loved it. I mean, I think the arcane, like, just their command of like creating spaces that you can approach different ways, and just their how well they implement combat. It's definitely more of a shooter than other immersive sims, but it like definitely has those mechanics down pretty pat. And it's just a fun game to play over and over, and I was really entrenched in it. I really enjoyed it while I was playing it, but then once I hit the end game, and I won't spoil anything, so I'll be really vague here, but I don't know what it is, but there's very few games that I've enjoyed that much while playing that got deflated so much at the end once everything kind of, and this is almost harkening back to what you were talking about, Nuno, where Death Stranding just made everything so obvious and hit you over the head with its conclusions that I felt like Deathloop kind of does the same thing in a way where it takes what used to be a nonlinear like experimentation approach for when you visit certain areas and the things you do and the sequences of cascading events that happen if you do certain things throughout the day. That repeats over and over, so you can try different things on new days. Anyway, once they like get to the end game, and it lays out incredibly clearly what you have to do and when and where. And I think after all of that, I was just like, oh, this is it kind of took away that core aspect of, or that core appeal of the experimentation and discovery that I enjoyed so much about the game leading up to it. And of course, the endings themselves and the narrative itself, although the dialogue was fantastic and I loved the characters, I especially Juliana and Colt, the two main leads. The story or the broader narrative itself, I think ultimately rung a little hollow, but I would recommend it still. It's a fantastic game, but it's one that I kind of stopped thinking about almost immediately after I finished it. So that was I don't know, kind of an interesting turn of events, I suppose. Anyway, I guess at this point we can flip over to our main event, which is Keio Flying Squadron 2. A game, as I was mentioning, I almost always call Keio Flying Squirrel for some reason. I don't think I'll ever get that out of my brain. But yeah, this is a game that was made for the Saturn. It came out, I think, just in Japan and PAL territories. I don't think we ever received it here in North America. And it was published by JVC, and their, I think at the time it was Victor Entertainment was their game development arm. So it's one of the handful of Saturn releases that studio produced, and it's a follow up on the Sega CD game Keio Flying Squadron, which was purely a shmup or a cute 'em up or whatever you want to call it. It definitely had that kind of cartoony aesthetic, but it was through and through a shoot 'em up. But Keio Flying Squadron 2 is not that, or at least mostly not that. So yeah, I think I'll just open up to the floor for everybody. What the hell is it? What is this game? I don't know, Lewis. I know you've been playing it a lot over the years. I don't know if you'd like to give an overall rundown.
I first played this game like a few years ago. I can't remember what it was, but it was when I got the pseudo Saturn sort stuff set up. And I thought, what a better game to burn onto a CDR than this, because I love this game so much. I have alerts set up for me on eBay to see when it gets listed, and this is not a cheap game. Neither is it's the first one on Sega Mega CD or Sega CD, wherever you are. This is an expensive game. It's so expensive that I see listings for people trying to sell broken discs of it, like for 100, 200. Like, I'm just thinking, this is how ridiculous it's got. So yeah, it was awesome to just be able to burn it onto a CDR and play it. And this is a platformer that is batshit crazy, to be honest. I think it's kind of almost a little bit less so at the beginning. It's still weird. Like, I mean, maybe I just have weird standards of what's weird in games, but it's kind of like less so at the beginning, and then just by the time you're at the end, you're just thinking, what am I playing? What I'd like to say is that it's a fairly easy platformer. The mechanics aren't going to blow you away, and I'd like to say, as far as it being a game, the reason why you'd play it is not because you want to play the next hidden gem platformer, you know, if you're a fan of that genre. I would say that you'd play this game in the same way you'd play something like Parodius, which, although I say it's not just about the gameplay, Parodius does have good game mechanics. It's a great game. But also something like Pooley Ruler as well, like just a game that you play for the sheer like ridiculousness of the sort of the theme of it. And obviously this one features a lot of like Japanese culture and just ridiculous. It's just a game that makes no sense. Things just change at any point. And yeah, like 1 minute you'll be like going through a forest, then you're on a roller coaster, then you're in like a ninja castle, and yeah, it's an odd game. But yeah, so other than it looking beautiful as well, it's like the graphics are incredible. I'd say it's a game that I enjoyed mostly for just kind of the ridiculousness of it and the humor, and yeah, so that's kind of why I enjoyed it anyway.
Yeah, I definitely hear you with the just kind of the off the wall. It's almost just, I don't know. It's so sporadic in how it throws new mechanics at you, which sometimes it abandons and never returns to. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
did that one thing once, and then it's never it. You know, it will never ask me to do it again. It's also a pretty short game, so I think it
Mhm.
took me. I mean, once I like stopped dying over and over in some of the levels that were giving me trouble, I think you can beat it in like a little over an hour probably.
And it's not punishing either. Like you can just keep going.
Yeah, I think there may be a limited number of continues, but it also like saves your game, so you can always just restart
Yeah.
the game and
Yeah.
play from the beginning of each of the last level that you had left off on.
Yeah. So I think if it was a hard game, I think a lot of people would just like, never play it again. But I think because it allows you to experience the, like I say, the spectacle, it's kind of one that you can persevere with quite easily, and you don't get hung up on it and throw the disc across the room,
Yeah, I really, I think there were like some of the sections. I think it was the train level underground with the lava. I think I had to play that a few times just to get a sense of like where to go and how to like best avoid all of that. But yeah, no, I agree. Overall, it's not the most difficult game. I think it was certainly a little easier than a stall, in a way, and I like just the diversity of like I said earlier, mechanics and different level types. And so yeah, the roller coaster level that you had mentioned, and then goes right into the swimming level and the aquarium, which feels quite a bit different than the platforming, which most of the game consists of, and then plus the other couple of the other couple levels that are shmups. I think those are both really easy though. So I think the straight platforming sections were the ones that I think offered some of those levels offered more challenge than others. But yeah, overall, yeah, I guess it depends because I did die repeatedly in a couple of places, but maybe that's just my poor reflexes as I get older. Well, yeah. Who else has played this game? I mean, Cameron, have you spent time with it, or what's your personal background with it?
It was the first Saturn import that I got. That was I think three years ago, and I got it because I was like, I needed a platformer. I was like, I'm playing all these Saturn games, and everyone recommends fighters or everyone recommends shmups, and they're these go-to things, and I'm like, but what about platformers? Like, are there any? So it's just kind of what I found, and it seemed like the most Japanese, if that is to be taken in any kind of way, right? Because it's like Lewis said, the culture inside of that game is very thick. Like
hmm
there's little kappa in the water. when it comes to the end and it gives you a game over, it actually draws like a kabuki curtain or something like that across the screen, and you're just like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. That's one of the things I love about it. I do think it's like more of there's more to it. I think it is kind of like a hidden gem platformer that maybe people are missing out on. I mean, I tried it today just on like a different difficulty because I didn't even know there was different difficulty settings. Because like the first time I played it, it was all in Japanese and all the menus and everything are in Japanese. But I got a Saturn Dave reproduction or production or a copy of it. So that one's in English, like the PAL copy. And that actually changed the whole game for me and made it even more interesting, because then you see the game has like a scoring system where it gives you so much of a positive for so many things you do, or negative depending on what you do. And depending on how many points you tally overall, the game will unlock different pieces of art for you. As your score gets lower and lower, it'll unlock different suggestions and tips and tutorials for you to look at. And as you get your score higher, it'll unlock like different interesting pieces of Keio art for you to enjoy. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Same with the difficulty. It has like it initially starts you off on like easy, which the game even says even a baby can finish this game on easy. And I think that's what makes it approachable, is it assumes that you don't know what's going to happen. And then as you progress and you learn how the game works, you can increase the difficulty yourself. And I love the variety of characters too, like the worlds and the bosses and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't play it on hard, but I did appreciate the differences when you go through a level on easy and then on normal. I really liked how subtle that it tweaks, like it adds a few obstacles here and there or changes some of the patterns of things. And like I thought that was really clever, rather than just, you know, throwing more enemies at you all the time. Although I'm sure it does that, but like I don't know, it's kind of how it builds into the world, the level design, that kind of that difficulty
Exactly, and
into.
that's why I think it gives you a better experience as a platformer overall. It's asking you to come back. It wants you to enjoy yourself overall, so that you will invest in it and try to get those, I guess, those hidden pictures and stuff like that over time. It'll even, like you said, let you save your game partway through if you're on the harder difficulties and you're like, I am super stuck here. It'll let you keep continuing from there even on those difficulties.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice that it's forgiving as it is, for sure.
So I've never beaten it myself. Like even on the easiest difficulty, I find that like some of the bosses, like later on in the game, I wasn't sure how to beat it because I was playing it all in Japanese. So I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm missing something. So now that I'm playing through it again in English, maybe I'll see how that changes it. Um, I was a little upset once I found out about this game, that I went back and I played the first game and found out what a good shooter that one was. And then when you play the shooter levels in this one and see the difference between the two games, it's interesting to think why they would have changed from one genre to another and then kind of still left some of the shooter elements in there.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
I'm I'm also wondering if there was kind of a broader trend emerging. I mean, I know it's kind of a trope to have your unexpected shmup level in games sometimes, but I mean, I think around the time you had Mega Man, some of the Mega Man games were doing it. You had, um, I don't know. I think there are just instances where that was maybe a little more commonplace, and they probably took some cues from the broader zeitgeist on that. But at the very least, it at least mixes things up, right? And so you're
yeah.
definitely don't feel like you're doing the same thing for too long before it puts you into some other situation. All right. Well, how about you, Nuno or Simon? I'm not sure if either of you had a chance to play through this one.
Well, I haven't. I didn't have the chance to play it this week as I meant to replay it, I should say, because I just had the most chaotic week. Um, Unfortunately, but I I will probably replay it in the coming days because KO2 is one of my favorite games on the Saturn. Like I actually made that clear way back in the Saturn Junkyard, in the, I should say, the reboot of the Saturn Junkyard in 2017. When I made one of the earliest videos for the Junkyard YouTube channel was a top five, my personal top five games on the Saturn. Or at least some of the games I wasn't very strict in it. I wouldn't say that those are literally my five favorite games on the Saturn, but they are some personal favorites of mine. And KO2 was on the list, and that is without a doubt one of my favorite games on the Saturn. I first played the demo that fortunately came with one of those demo CDs on the Saturn that were very popular back in the day. I can't remember. They actually had like a name for the series of demo CDs that I can't recall right now. And I played the demo was the very first level of the game, and I played it like so many times. I know that level by heart. I played it so many times. And then when I got back into the Saturn in the early Saturn Junkyard days, when I got my Saturn modded to be able to play pirated games, because as you mentioned, before, the KO2 only came out in Japan and in Europe, and it is a somewhat rare game. So it was released in my region, but it's hard to come by, or at least it was back then. Now it's probably worse. So I had to resort to burning a disc, and I finally had the chance to play it, to play the whole way through, which was a very special moment for me after playing the first level so many times. Finally, being able to play the whole game, which sometimes is actually disappointing. I can tell you how many times I finally played a full game that I had tried before, and I ended up disappointed. It wasn't the case with KO2, fortunately. I loved the game. I loved it to the end. I only beat it once. I only played it through once. So that's why I was saying that I actually lost a good chance to replay it on the days leading up to this podcast. And I do want to play it again because it's just one of those games that is very special to me, and I'm absolutely sure that I'm going to love playing it again. I also played the first one out of curiosity, being such a fan of KO2. I decided to play KO1, which is a cute game. I don't hold it in a really high regard. It's not one of my favorite shoot 'em ups, but it was cute enough. Although I think I liked it more because of the relationship with KO2, of my relationship with KO2. And speaking of the switch from shoot 'em up to platformer from one game to the other, I think it was the right move. I don't know what made the team decide to do that switch, but it was definitely the right move because the Saturn has a whole lot of shoot 'em ups, and it doesn't have nearly as many platformers. And in that regard, I think it was easier for KO2 to carve out its place in the Saturn library and still be relevant today, instead of being just one mod shooter. And while still retaining some shooting levels, which once again is great. I think it was a great move to kind of shake up the gameplay, so it doesn't become too repetitive. I mean, in general, the game is anything but repetitive. As Lewis mentioned, the levels don't really follow any sort of logical sequence. They're just almost completely unrelated. And they just went for variety in terms of level layout, design, in terms of graphical style, in terms of platforming challenges. They really went all out, which is something that I appreciate immensely. It's a very Japanese game, also, as Cameron mentioned. It's a very Japanese game, not only in all the ways it pays tribute to Japanese mythology and culture, but also, for example, in its sense of humor. I mean, you would never see a Western video game developer making a game with a teenage girl in a swimsuit and bunny ears, like just the general style and tone of the game is so very Japanese. So in that sense, it's still very quirky even to this day. I think it has this very unique style, and it just plays awesome. It's once again, you guys basically said it all already. I don't think I have much to add besides just sharing my personal experience. But yeah, I think the gameplay is it's a very relaxed game, sort of easy game, which is also a breath of fresh air because back then in the Saturn days, most games were still really hard. Um, uh, and of course the graphics are amazing. They are colorful. They are vibrant. I was a guest in a podcast a couple of months ago. We actually talked about that collaboration in our last podcast, I think. And one of the questions I'm talking about my being a guest on Sega Zits, the Portuguese Sega podcast. And one of the questions that they asked me right near the end was one of the hosts said he never owned a Saturn. So he asked me if, in my opinion, the Saturn was still relevant today, if it was still a console worth getting into today, and if so, why was it still worth it? And the stock answer to that is a console is only as good as the games that it has, specifically the games that you can play anywhere else, the games that were never ported, that were never remade. And the Saturn still has a lot of exclusive games. KO2 is one of those. It's one game that you can only play on a Saturn, if not on the real console, on an emulator, but it's kind of the same thing. You either get a console or you replicate that console in a way, but you just can't simply do away with that console. And KO2 is one of those games. I can't remember if I actually mentioned it on the podcast or if I just thought about it as an example. But to me, KO2 is an example of why Saturn is still relevant today, because the game itself, I think, is still relevant today. Is it the best platformer of all time? Probably not. But I think it does everything right. It checks every box, at least in my opinion. And not only that, but it's also more than the sum of its parts. Maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe it's just a personal thing that I have with the game. But I truly think that it's a game that is still worth playing today, even with all of the to the platformer games that we have available. Not only old games, but also like the indie games, the 2D platformer games that became so popular in the last 4 or 5 or 6 years in the indie scene. I still think KO2 is very unique because of its sense of humor, because of its tone, of its style, because it's a beautiful game with beautiful 2D graphics. It's because it's a game that plays really well. It's not too challenging. Some people will probably think it's actually too easy, but hey, you can't please anyone in that regard. And at least in my opinion, I think it's better to err on the side of being too easy instead of too hard, because if it's too hard, you're cutting of people off from enjoying it. And yeah, I think AO2 is an amazing game, absolutely amazing. I'm really sorry that the OS never got it back then. Prevented a lot of people from being exposed to it. And it's still a relevant game today, still worth playing. And if you have a Saturn, you have no excuse. Play it one way or another. If you don't have a Saturn, it's a good reason to get one, or at least to get into Saturn emulation, to be able to play games such as this. And that's basically the biggest compliment that I can pay a 20-year-old game, more than 20-year-old, 20-something-year-old game.
I just want to jump in and just say, yeah, I think everything you said, Nuno, was brilliant, and I just want to say, like, I think many people will know this because of the Sega CD, Mega CD version, and maybe see this and think, what, like, this isn't, because there's a thing with shooters, isn't it? They hold such like high esteem, and I think people seeing this like quite revered shooter on the Mega CD, one that's probably mainly well known because of how bloody expensive it is now as well. Like it's quite ridiculously priced, but I think people will see this and they'll think, oh, there's a sequel on Saturn, and maybe see that it's a platformer and think, but no, it's a great game and possibly has a little bit more variation to it than the original, perhaps. Like there's more, like Brian mentioned, that it kind of switches up game mechanics like as it pleases, and yeah, it's definitely worth people's time. Don't be put off by the switch in gameplay.
Speaking of Switch, you think this would be a good candidate for porting so modern audiences can play it? Do you think it would fit right in with a modern context, I suppose?
I think so. I think that more people get the references as well. Like, maybe if you'd have put this in front of me back when it was released, I would have been like, this is like weird. But, I've watched a lot of anime now. I know a lot about Japan. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, like, I can't remember exactly like all the references, but like there's a lot of references in there and like culture, and like I'm playing through and I recognize things that I've been exposed to through Japanese media over the years, and it's like more rewarding to kind of like get it as well. So but also just fascinating, it's all new to you, I guess. But yeah, I wish it was ported, but I don't know, it'd be a slim chances, I think.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the rights or the copyright situation is at this point. So I know I think they were absorbed. I don't know. It seems like it changed hands, the company, over the years, and so it seems like JVC. What is it? JVC Kenwood. It looks like their current name is Victor Entertainment. Like maybe they still have the rights to it. Maybe they sold it off. I have no idea. But yeah, that would be really cool if somebody could work out a way to make that available, because it really is such a unique game. It's such an endearing game, and definitely deserves a little more, I don't know, just a little more exposure than it ultimately did. How about you, Simon? Do you have any thoughts on KO2?
Yeah, quite a few actually, but I'll make it as brief as I can. First of all, Brian,
Take your time.
well, like you, Brian, I give it a different name. I constantly add the word super and call it Super Keio Flying Squadron 2. I have no idea why I do that. Secondly, like Cam, I got this game as a Japanese disc and was intrigued to the point that I then bought a repro English version so I could hear the story and know what was going on a little bit more. In terms of I'm listening to everyone saying how easy the game is. You'll be unsurprised to hear that I've never completed it, so I don't find it that easy. I love the transition from platform to shooter. I think that's brilliant. There's a few games that do that. Some of the Wonder Man games did it on the Mega Drive, I think, and the Master System. I don't know, but I like the transition between shooter and platform. I'd never have played this game at the time I owned my original Saturn, because I was obsessed with 3D polygonal games, and a 2D side-scrolling platformer would not have been something that I was interested in. I did buy Clockwork Knight at the time because it had a pseudo 3D sort of layout and also looked so different to 16-bit games, and I'm not sure that Keio, despite its beauty, looks too different from what had come before. So I think I'd have been uninterested in it when I owned my Saturn originally. So I came back to it, but not came back to it. I was introduced to it in 2017. I think possibly when Nuno did his top 5 would have been the first time I ever heard about it. But I think I think it was me that was wrong back in those days. Some of the 2D platformers of the 32-bit era are some of the nicest, and perhaps games which have stood the test of time best in terms of visuals. That I'm thinking of Rayman as well. They don't look anywhere near as dated as some of the 3D polygonal games that I was so obsessed with at the time. So I think they've definitely stood the test of time. I think they'd be great to be transitioned onto the Switch. I think that more and more as the retro scene sort of begins to flower and take off, and we've all seen within the last 5 years this scene get bigger and bigger, and games inflate in price and popularity. I think there's a good chance if it possibly can be ported, it will be ported. And I think that many people would enjoy this game. I had no awareness of it during its first run. Nuno said it came out in Europe, but it certainly wasn't something that I was aware of at the time. So yeah, I've bought it twice. I love it. I think it's a great looking game. I like the gameplay itself, but it's not as easy for me as it obviously is for some of you guys. So they are my thoughts, really. I'm not going to say too much about it because I think everyone has said everything that needs to be said about the game. But yeah, it's definitely in one of my games that I would recommend for the Saturn and for someone to play in 2021. And that's it, really. That's all my thoughts on the game.
Very nice. Are there any other things that anybody wanted to mention?
I have a few thoughts.
Just to say, keep your eyes and ears open during the month of October. We will get more Halloween content onto the Junkyard Facebook group. We'll get more content onto the blog before the end of October.
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to the mystery horror game coverage, Simon. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Lewis.
Yeah, so just because a few people have mentioned they played the Japanese version and then went on to play the English version. I think play the English version, if only just for the sort of campy voice acting. It's not awful, but it's kind of wooden in all the right ways that kind of like suit the game and like
it's amazing. As like that over the top kind of dub style in the 90s. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it sounded like it was maybe recorded in like, I don't know, something in like a tin can or something. A little.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The main character, I'm trying to remember what her name is now. Rami, I think, is like always making commentary on stuff. It's quite kind of charming, really. And then I was just also kind of thought it was quite interesting. I was just looking up scores from magazines, and it kind of seems like in Japan the game kind of got like middling reviews, sort of 50-60%. Famitsu gave it 63, and the Sega Saturn magazine Japan gave it 57. But then and I don't know if it's kind of interesting. Is like, was it maybe because the game is just so strange to people in the West, but in Europe, UK and other countries like France and stuff like that, it was quite positive scores. Total Saturn in the UK gave it 92, and then you got Mean Machine Sega gave it 81. So the one magazine in France gave it 40, so they weren't too keen. But there was Megaforce France 82. So a lot of like quite positive scores from I suppose the Western magazines at the time, but not so much in Japan. I guess maybe because there's an abundance of weird Japanese centric games that came out in Japan that I suppose this was like one of the few maybe we saw at the time, until obviously now you can just import anything. But yeah, I just found that quite interesting.
Yeah, I also wonder how much of that is just due to how our collective tastes were shifting at the time, especially with Japanese video games. In the platformer space, especially, it's like come 1996. I mean, we were looking ahead to Super Mario 64. We were looking ahead to all of these games that were about to revolutionize the genre, and so that could be part of it. And so there just maybe wasn't as much appetite for 2D platformers at the time. I mean, we certainly didn't see a ton of them, right? Like the Saturn, I mean, didn't have a lot of two-dimensional platform games outside of what Rayman, this, and a stall, right? I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking about, but it seemed like they were really trying to dabble or move that genre in the third dimension. I know Super NES, of course, Donkey Kong Country, those games were still very popular, and I wonder if that might have worked against KO as well, just because there is maybe some commonality in there where you have the different vehicle stages and the swimming kind of felt similar, but there was a lot more to Donkey Kong Country. Like those games had a lot of levels, a lot of mechanics. They just kind of threw the kitchen sink, and they were also very polished. The digitized graphics were maybe a little bit more just trendy at the time. Even though looking back today, I would say KO2 looks at least as nice in its aesthetic and art style. But yeah, there's probably just a lot of factors there that it was unfortunately got the short end of the stick for, maybe.
Yeah, just one last thought as well is just it'll always baffle me, and I hope one day, some YouTuber will research it and give us the answer. But I'm really intrigued and want to know why it was exclusive to Europe, at least in the West, and not America. Like I was trying to sort of think about like the game, the way it looks, everything about it, and like America got something like a style, but they didn't get this. So the only thing I could think of is, I don't know, maybe the first game sold better in Europe, perhaps, and maybe that's why they brought over the sequel. But yeah, that's something I'll always wonder about.
Yeah, and then now, of course, just to correct myself, I'm remembering that there was also a lot of other 2D games earlier on with or at least platformers like the Clockwork Knight games and Mr. Bones and Gex and those. So,
Well, if you think about what what the climate was, I guess, for American games during the Sega CD's life, right? I think you got to think of that too, because at that time Genesis games were like redoing their covers to make them look more Western, and you'd have games like Landstalker or Suikoden come over with like these obnoxiously American covers, and you weren't really sure what that game even was anymore, right?
Mhm.
And at that same time, you've got Keio going, "Look how Japanese we are."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
look at us. Like, even our cover is not like been changed. The cover is not changed. What's a shmup? You don't know, but you're gonna fucking love it, right? Like,
yeah.
so and that's the thing. Like, I don't know how well that was really received at the time, especially when you consider what that game goes for on Sega CD. Like, I think it's worth more than Snatcher now.
Hmm.
So maybe it's like an incredibly low print run, and people like realizing, oh wow, this isn't a bad game. This is really a good game. I mean, at the time they were pushing those movie games like Night Trap,
Mhm.
which I'm still surprised anyone thought was a good idea.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I don't know.
I would love to have seen the. I don't know. Someone needs to do this as their niche on like Twitter or something. Become like an artist who just does Americanized covers for Japanese games, and I'd love to see like the Americanized Keio Flying Squadron interpretation. That'd make my like year. That'd be incredible.
Yeah, just want to add a couple of things. First of all, there was a promotional CD in Japan for KO2 that had some like promotional stuff. I think it had higher resolution versions of all the in-game cinematics and artwork and stuff like that. It's probably incredibly hard to find the original, but there are backups online if anyone listening wants to check that out. If you find yourself getting really into the game and want to kind of explore everything to do with it, be on the lookout for this Japanese promotional exclusive. And also, surprisingly enough, KO2 wasn't the last game in the franchise. There was no real sequel, but there was a game that came after on the PlayStation. It was called, I can't pronounce it, Rami-chan no Uedo Sugoroku. And it was, I never played it, but it doesn't look good. It's basically a board game, like one of those digital board games. And I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why they decided to try that. You can't criticize these guys for like always doing the same thing because they're actually all over the place. And yeah, that was the last time we heard of Rami. It was on the PlayStation on a board game of all things.
Yeah, that's funny. I had no idea. I'm just looking it up now to see. Yeah, it looks like they just describe it as a puzzle game in the KO franchise. Interesting.
You know
I
what?
doubt. I doubt I'll ever play it, but that's cool to know. Sorry, go ahead, Lewis.
That like unlocked a memory in my head. I remember when I was writing the piece I did on the Saturn Junkyard for the top 100. I remember reading, what, there's another game? So I appreciate Nuno for unlocking that in my brain. Yeah, it didn't look interesting. Maybe if it's in English, I'd give it a go, you know. I like the charm of KO2, so perhaps that would have the same, you know, charm. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, one thing I think would be fun is if it has cutscenes in a similar way that are just so over the top. I mean, the dialogue I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but like just the characters are so outlandish, and Rami herself is incredibly selfish. Like I think the whole turn of events only happened because, because I don't know, some of the other lady steals her orb, and then they both get their orbs stolen by the raccoon guy, and then but Rami just wants to collect all the orbs back so she can unlock treasure and get rich, right? And so then she goes and steals other people's orbs throughout the game. I don't know, I always just thought that was funny, and then as a concept, and then the way that she reacts to other characters and some of the dialogue from all around for everybody is just so non sequitur laden. It's hilarious. I had a great time with it, so I don't know. I could see if there was another game that had some of that. Although it would probably be in Japanese, and I'd have to translate it. But it would, yeah. I don't know. I bet that would be a lot of fun.
It also features the obligatory inclusion of a digitized person, like human, in one of the boss fights.
That's
like
right. Was that one of the developers or like I don't know. They block out the eyes also.
One of the strangest things. Like it's all like different, like Japanese like demon masks, and then there's like it changes into something else, and then when you beat it, it's just like this dude's face just appears. And that would definitely gave me vibes of I previously mentioned a Puli Ruler, where it's just like they just whacked a load of digitized members of the development team just in the the levels, and it's just so odd and incredibly Japanese. They really like loved that kind of technique in their games, just breaking the fourth wall, I suppose, like that.
Yeah, there's an immense amount of charm to it for sure. But yeah, on that note, I guess we can just close out. Where can people find us? Cameron?
You can find me anywhere at Sundane, but mostly you can find me at the Saturn Junkyard.
Nice. And Lewis, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at LewisJFC, Lewis spelled Lewis. And I'm also on the Dreamcast Junkyard. That's the crew I roll with. And yeah, I'm on the podcast, the Dream Pod, and also I write articles on the blog, from time to time. And so yeah, so find the things I'm involved with. Also look for Derek Pascarella's stuff as well if you want to see the Nakoruru translation. Yep.
That's awesome. How about you, Nuno?
You can always find me at the Saturn Junkyard YouTube channel. Just posted a video about a very interesting development in the Switch homebrew scene. Basically, there's a compilation of 3 Saturn games, 3 shoot 'em ups: Cotton 2, Cotton Boomerang, and Guardian Force, which are all made by the same team. And they release a compilation. It's not just on the Switch; it's also on the PS4, and it's going to come out on the PC and I think the Xbox as well. But for now, at least the Switch version, some others found out that the games weren't ported to run natively on the Switch. They're actually running on an emulator that seems to have been developed in-house by the developers of this compilation. So it doesn't seem to have been based on pre-existing emulators, which sometimes happens. And immediately people started to think, well, what if we try to replace these games with other games? Because they're just, if you buy this game, what you're getting is literally an emulator and ROMs or ISOs of the original games that are then running on this emulator on the Switch, and that work. And you can actually um, put other games in there and play them using this emulator made by the professional programmers that worked on this on this compilation. So that is really cool, and I did a video covering that. And
How well do the more intensive games on the Saturn run on the emulator, or is it all pretty consistent?
well, it was most of the games that I've seen people try. I didn't actually try this for myself because I don't own a Switch. But this was found by people over at the GBA Temp forum. And from the feedback that I saw, a lot of people jumped into this and made like Excel sheets, spreadsheets with compatibility tables. And I would say most of the popular games run surprisingly well. You wouldn't think that like games that weren't supposed to run on this would run that well. The emulator could have been tailored just specifically for the 3 games that it was supposed to work on. That happens a lot. Like, you don't make a general purpose software, you make it only appropriate to run those 3 games. But that is not the case. People are claiming that many popular games like Sega Rally, like Daytona USA, so many games are running really well, like surprisingly well on this emulator. Maybe not perfectly, and I know that some games don't boot, other games have issues, which is always expected. No emulator is perfect. But yeah, it was a really surprise. No one was really expecting that, to have so many games running that.
Yeah, and that's really impressive that that would be the case just because I don't know, it seems like in most scenarios like this, if they were building an emulator from scratch, they would just focus on it doing, what they need to make those specific games run. So, pushing really, of course, the 2D sprite work and, really specialize in that. I would expect that to do really well, but that they wouldn't really mess with the 3D, trying to get too much of that to render just because I don't think either of those 3 games really needed that. But yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Although that also makes me wonder if it is built on an existing emulator that already kind of has that compatibility, that broader compatibility, but then they maybe tweaked it or changed it enough to work for what they needed for the Guardian Force games.
Yeah, we'll probably find out more about this as people get interested in it, because this is a really recent development. This only happened like a week before I posted that video, so it's still a very recent thing, and people are probably going to be digging through that code, and not the actual code because it's closed source, like they have to reverse engineer it. But people are going to pay really close attention to it and maybe find more interesting stuff about this. And besides that, if you don't care about Switch or emulation in general, you can just check out our YouTube channel on Halloween, and maybe you'll see something else that you might like. The invitation is done.
Nice.
Ooh,
Mysterious.
I know, that sounds good.
All right. Well, how about you, Simon? What where can folks find you?
Okay, you can find me usually on the Saturn Junkyard Facebook page. You're going to be able to find me on the Saturn Junkyard blog, which is saturnjunkyard.blogspot.com. At the end of October, there'll be my new review there. And also, before we go, can I just give a shout out to a few people? First of all, thank you to Lewis for coming on the show. I love it when we do stuff with the Dreamcast Junkyard, because without the Dreamcast Junkyard, there would be no Saturn Junkyard. So first of all, that's the first thing I want to say.
Oh, thank you.
Second, can I give a shout out to Gaz McCormack, who is a member of the Saturn Junkyard team, and he does all of our stuff on the Facebook page. He's been doing some really great Meet the Members posts recently. So yeah, just wanted to say those two things. Oh, and a shout out to Sega Lord X for always referencing the Saturn Junkyard on his videos, of which he puts out a lot, and they are fantastic. Not perhaps quite at the level of Nuno's videos, but they're almost there. So that's it from
A lot.
me.
Oh, my dog. Yeah, that riled her up. I don't know if you can hear Shio in the background. Yeah, no, I second all of that. Yeah, thank you very much, Lewis, for coming on the show. As I mentioned before the podcast, I think we meant to do another crossover as a part 2 at some point, and then I think at least Tom and I had talked about it, and I think we forgot. So we should arrange something soon and get the pods back together.
Well,
That would
yeah,
be
it's the 15th year of the Saturn Junkyard, the 15th anniversary in December. So maybe we could
Holy
get
shit.
some joint stuff going then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, myself and, some of the other guys would happily jump on a pod. And,
You're always welcome here. Always. Anyone from the Dreamcast Junkyard is part of our family too. So for sure.
and thanks for having me on. It's likewise. I love the Saturn Junkyard because, I think Tom made a joke in the crossover. He said, gets a bit boring talking about the Dreamcast all the time. And,
Yeah.
but basically, I love the Saturn as well. It's like the most underappreciated console just ever. So it's probably one of my top consoles of all time. So, I hold it in, similar, regard as I do the Dreamcast. So it's brilliant to be on, and amazing that you got me on to chat about one of my favorite games on the Saturn as well. So I really appreciate that, and yeah, I hopefully will love to be on again sometime. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thank you all, and I think on behalf of the Titancast crew, I will just bid you adieu. All right, I guess that's it.